that many people are advocating for military intervention, and I doubt anyone will not say that that's not warranted. We're not just talking National Guard support either. That seems to be only supporting the Capitol or uses private police for governors and mayors. We simply need the Army. We need Marines. But we're being told that our troops are being used to protect bases and are simply, in some cases, just stuck overseas. And I doubt you'll find a voice that doesn't say we have a bigger problem at home, that we need to bring troops here to deal with the situation. And that's the big question that we have. What even is this illness? Is it a bacterial? Is it fungal? Is it viral? And we're hearing a lot of people say it's a virus, but there's no official documentation we've been handed that says that's the case. I think that would go a long way to even coming up with some sort of preventative measures. Maybe a way to delay the infection, but at this point, we've got nothing. And there's also a split between health professionals and the population that are being ravaged by it. If you ask the governments, it's a serious infection that deteriorates the brain of those it infects. But people have witnessed it firsthand, and even doctors in hospital who are trying to treat it and calling it an illness of the dead. That's a serious accusation, and obviously that's a serious condition. As we know, it cannot be reversed, which has really brought up ethical questions. On the one hand, we have health officials and legalese law saying you can't kill an infected person, but those who call these things ghouls believe they have no future and should simply be put down. And who is right in that equation? What is assured is these are not your loved ones. These are not your friends. These are not your families. These are not the people you once knew. They are basically transformed into something different. And what is worse is they are now a danger to you. They will hunt you down and kill you if they have that opportunity. And we have heard many reports of that happening, which it makes in and of itself this argument very counterintuitive. How can you be on one side that's saying we're trying to save someone, and on the other case saying that basically this person is your enemy? And that's the problem I see here. We're not getting real about the illness. We're being told it's a momentary problem, it's a passing moment, and from everything we're seeing, it's clearly not. Emergency stations are being activated, civil defense in full swing. I mean, you'll be hard-pressed to find a three-letter agency that isn't sending every bit of manpower they have at this. And pretty much every state on the East and West Coast has enacted some form of a state of emergency. And that includes Texas, Oklahoma. It's pretty clear it's affecting everywhere around the world. This isn't isolated. We even received a report not long ago that Israel is asking for help from allies or anyone that will even provide it. They're having serious issues with the illness coming from what could be considered a very packed population. And they're forcing massing at their borders. We don't know how long they would be able to hold out in that situation. And the illness itself has become a form of a barrier to invading different spaces. But once that barrier is gone, there is no question as to what will transpire next. Many of these cities in the Middle East, too, are describing a problem. In some cases, some groups have gone out and publicly attacking anyone that they feel is ill or blaming it on the illness and confirming or saying that they are cursed or using any sort of excuse, I think, to take action against them. And that's going to be the same in many countries that don't have qualms that we do about destroying those that have, in best possible terms, fall into this illness. I mean, how long before that moves to every country? People get crazy when they don't see things getting fixed. And it's how you end up with people making sacrifices to some messed up deity, like some Aztec style of public sacrifice, in hopes to stop the insanity or stem the flood. And how long before that becomes the bigger problem? That it's not the illness that's the problem, it's those that are trying to prevent it that become the concern. It's why it's so important that we keep things flowing in the United States. We say to ourselves, we're better than this, but once we start seeing things fall apart, people become archaic very quickly. We've seen that some people are, as they were calling it, bugging out. Some are starting to move towards areas they see as least affected, but that's not close to the majority. Civil Defense in one announcement said it was simply better to just stay where you are and try to hold it out. And that to me says they don't know how long this will last or where it will spread. We may be in this for the long haul. The important part for that is to actually give us information on what to do in that case, how to be better prepared. And maybe the point is that if you aren't already prepared, it's already too late. That's been the question we have. What actions are going to be taken for those that are not prepared? And we have to be honest, and many people here are completely out of their element. One thing is clear right now, and that is we need infrastructure. In some areas, grocery store shelves are already emptied. Fuel stations are saying they're out of gas. And forget medication. If you need medication in these areas, you don't have it. Entire hospitals shut down. Some call 911, get a busy signal. And that's happening in many areas, especially bigger cities. If you go to a state house to ask what's happening, you're met with unarmed military. It's frustrating. And you really feel like you're on your own. And when one doctor just came out openly and said that these are, and he used the word zombies, and they have a need to feed, and the response remained from the CDC that concept was preposterous. And even a kickback from the public, who said that these are just sick individuals that deserve to be treated for their illness. And now the results is that information that from that doctor has been completely removed, and any kind of answers that we would have gleaned from it are gone. And that to me says that this has become a political discussion, that those that want to save and treat, they want to make them go away. That there's two factions. You either want to save the sick people, or you want to euthanize sick people. And that's become the line drawn in the sand. And the reality is shelters have become death traps. They've stored hundreds of sick people that could potentially infect others. And the question has become, what happens if they break out? The EPA has already stated concerns that they don't know where and how these bodies are being disposed of, and that's a critical concern for public health. I have a feeling that we've come to the point of piles of bodies being burnt in some areas, but the truth is we don't know. They could be just rotting in fallen shelters somewhere. One eyewitness said it was a twisted form of catch and release, that they'd capture the sick people, try and store them until they basically ran out of space, and then would just cycle them out. A truck would come pick up one group, move to the next, but the question was still, how long could that last? Where did they go? I mean, is that even feasible? It's hard to know at this point even what news that we're getting is real, and in some cases just public hearsay, or someone trying to get attention or even capitalize on what some are calling an apocalypse. It was clear one sheriff was organizing capture groups in Florida where they were loading these things up in trucks, but what happened after that? Are we talking firing squads? The thought of it all is just horrifying to anyone, and I'm sorry for even the gruesome nature of this discussion. But this is what we're facing right now. Alright. In really been, where is the safest place to be? And from our research, it appears to be the middle of the U.S. That's going to be a much better go of this than, say, the coastlines. In our information here, large cities are simply not safe. Even packed rural areas have seen problems, and that's what happens is the sick and ill simply are walking the streets. They invade parks, public structures. We heard from a couple of experts that said the safest place to be is in the woods and armed, and in some ways that does make the most sense. But when we asked the public overall, the majority said only 11% believe that they can confidently live in an isolated area such as a forest or mountain. So that puts your options at a very minimum area to be able to take care of these things. A rumor that we were also hearing was that federal agents were attempting to amass structures in what could possibly be an attempt at staving off these things. At this point, we can only think of that as a conspiracy-style rumor at best. We don't know if it's for survivors either. It could be to contain the ill because these agencies refuse to euthanize anything. If they did, I can only imagine the backlash they'd receive.
Attention, attention. We are under a public lockdown at this time. All those, even if not in an area you believe is affected, should stay in your homes. Lock all doors and windows. Do not attempt to leave or travel until advised further. If you do not have a place to go, report to an emergency shelter near you. An official hotline has been set up to confirm where to go and how to know if you are sick. Do not approach anyone you believe is infected or fails to respond to commands. This has been a public service announcement. Further instructions will be made available soon. Continue to tune into the station for more information as we receive it.
Next steps are not clear at this time, but we and many channels like us have gone to a 24/7 broadcasting schedule to cover these events. One thing we haven't heard about is where the president is and what actions are being taken by the government to secure the situation. In the last report, we were told the president was making a visit to Georgia, and we're going to surmise that would have included a visit to the CDC to get a more adequate first-hand report of what has transpired up until this point. The problem may be that there is nothing to report. The situation as we see it has remained in a deteriorating state, with every option being effectively exacerbated. It was clear that things have began to deteriorate fairly quickly as well. What began as an isolated incident spiraled out of control in less than a week, and suddenly it has become a global problem. At first, for some countries, it was easy to cover, but like a pimple on your nose, it quickly became hard to ignore. Yeah, my producer just said it's clear when I don't have a teleprompter with my analogies. So I apologize if none of this lands for you. I think it's important to inject some sort of levity to this situation, even if it is serious. It's also, unlike regular news cycles, we're having everything lined up when we normally report news. Here we don't have really a script at all for this. We just get these reports. Most of it are difficult, if not impossible, to fact check. What used to be a concern to make sure everything is accurate is just get out the big stuff and hope it's right. So we'll have to probably apologize later for some of the information that we're handing over, but that's the nature of news right now. And we're just making sure that you get everything that you need, and unfortunately I do understand that a lot of that stuff we're not getting what we need, which is something that we discussed earlier. We're going to continue to discuss until we get the information that we need. What is clear is that some areas of use and abroad are still reporting as safe. As insane as that may sound, the Northwest, for instance, we've heard little or no reporting from those areas. Certain areas of Canada, especially near the border, have seemed relatively quiet, almost as if to be content with witnessing the carnage unfold elsewhere. It is clear that Canada has reported cases, and it can be assumed that even in limited numbers, the situation becomes serious for them as well. Still, they do have hospitals that are functioning in certain areas, and even if they are at limited capacity, they are still working. Obviously, in areas that are highly impacted, you can find outliers that don't even know anything is happening. In one interview, the resident thought we were asking them something that was part of a stunt, that it wasn't even real, which seems incredible to even report. The other big concern we have right now, which I wanted to jump over to, is the election. There's been a torn group of people that say the election should not take place, while others say we should already have it, should go ahead and have it now instead of waiting till later. Whether that's going to transpire or not is up for debate, and chances are any change in the cycle would be impossible. There's already discussions that hiring staff may not be available, and the prevailing wisdom is that we have bigger concerns, especially one of safety. While others are saying this is just a part of a way to manipulate the election, one person even coined the phrase a zombie collusion, which was very interesting. No matter how crazy it may sound, the truth is that this infection will affect the election. And that's what's really baffled the mind of many right now, is that some people are trying to go about their lives like nothing has happened. And yes, things like power and communication are going to be important, but if you're trying to pretend this is just another day, even if it's nothing going outside of your house, then it's time to wake up. It's time to give this information to people who do not know that it's happening. It's why we're hearing so much about mental health right now as well. As people try to keep shelves stocked and lights going on, it's getting more and more difficult to do so. And we need to come to the reality of what's happening, as well as being okay with it happening, no matter how crazy that may sound. So getting the information out to people who may not have this information, I know it may seem odd, but making sure that they're aware that anything is going on, and that we can get some of these additional resources going, especially for people who, before, I'm sure there's many people out there that are off the grid, that have already taken action, and are probably in a better place to counter what's going on than many of us believe we are. But not knowing this information is probably more deadly than actually knowing or being in the middle of it. So word is just coming in that subway stations almost everywhere now have shut down. New York and Boston both discontinued their services, at least for the moment. One complaint was that infected had blocked tracks, and one train conductor quit on the spot after running over someone on the tracks, while others have said the tunnels have been basically considered death traps. Places overseas have already canceled public rail systems for similar reasons, including a crash in Osaka, Japan, that killed hundreds after what was being called bodies on the track ended in a train derailing. Airlines originally constrained to areas where were authorized to fly now have to contend with finding out which airport actually still function. Some parts of the UK no longer have airports that are even in operation or even receiving flights. China has selected areas that can be flown to, but these are very limited. Even major airlines are already saying they plan to shut down travel until they can work properly, basically just leaving these large jets sitting in stations unused. So if you plan to fly, or had plans, they may want to change those. We are hearing that some overseas boats are still operational, and even some cruise ships are being basically retrofitted to take commuter passengers instead of pleasure cruise. How long that will transpire is unknown, and concerns first were raised about infections aboard being very high or very possible. Health officials have basically instructed that they are not concerned so much with the infections, that the proper testing of water supplies and toiletries and the food is the most paramount of importance. And again, we don't know how the illness is effectively spread other than personal contact and exchanging of basically mucus, saliva, things of that nature, blood. Whether those are things that can actually do that is still up in the air. So one thing may be a concern about any travel where you're packed into a single area like that may be something of a concern, and making sure that these have the right kind of guards available if you absolutely must travel, which I know there were a lot of people trying to get back to their home countries to make sure that everything is right there, and I can personally understand that. So I see this piece of information that came across my desk a while, but it appears some companies are taking action. Gross & Stern, the famous product production company, has foregone their fab housing business and gone into mobile shelter construction systems. How those are going to be used is yet to be discussed. How corporate has started to work on supplies and options as well, so most being power-oriented supplies. And other companies that make food rationing for the military are currently now producing what they're calling a public food source option, which I'm guessing will be used to hand out to the public. And that's also one thing that people have been concerned about, and that is fuel. You don't realize how quickly fuel can run out. It's important to remember that gas does go bad. One thing that was suggested was an ethanol-based fuel source, and some aftermarket companies were working on that aftermarket system for some of the popular platforms, such as generators, to convert them over to be able to use something like an ethanol fuel. If you bought an EV and your power is out, that's unfortunate. We did look into the concept of solar, and if you have solar, you're in a good place. But if you have solar, you may be in better shape. Some have said being plugged into metering systems have shut down their solar systems as well, causing different systems, and they do problems, and they don't have a way of contacting anyone to come fix it. I just believe that there has to be an easy fix to that there has to be some way to basically flip a switch and say this system is now being used internally versus externally, or how those are plugged in. Unfortunately, that's not an area of expertise that we're well versed at, but that may be something that one of these companies might want to get on board with and help people that are having problems with their systems right now, because I would think that solar would be a good thing to have, especially with the power went out. So even as ordering systems have now started to convert over to phones, and in some cases direct customer formats. So direct to customer being that you can order something directly from a company and have someone, instead of ordering or shipping it to a larger store that may not be functioning at this time, that in some areas they're directly to customers, and that may ease some of these problems if they can get some sort of infrastructure going to directly deliver products to customers. I see that as a very life-sustaining thing to do. Now, how you order those with your internet and phone down may be a concern, but I think if you need it bad enough, you might actually try to figure that out. Obviously, radio CBs, people have moved over to more archaic systems, emergency systems that have already been enacted, and ways to get communication with people. But I think a lot of that's going to be who already has it or has it available to them. The stock market right now is down, so there's no time frame when it'll open back up either. So whether those businesses will stay in business is going to be a question. If you had an opportunity to invest in them, it has come and gone. But it's clear that people want to move items still, and that they want to get those to the public. So we're going to stick with this. We have, I'm being told right now, we're going to need to step away for a few minutes here to work on our own power issues. So we'll be right back. Make sure you share this information that do not have access to it. Again, information is power at this time. So we're going to keep those radios and televisions, please, dialed in, and we're going to continue to give you the news as it comes in. We'll be back in just a moment.